The Forgotten Fleet. The observation deck of the horizon stretched in a perfect arc, its transparent panels offering an unobstructed view of the void beyond. Commander Ilara Voss stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her tall frame silhouetted against the stars as she studied the mysterious formation adrift in the darkness. Behind her, the delegation from the Galactic Alliance whispered among themselves, their voices a mixture of amusement and dismissal. "Primitive construction," remarked Ambassador Felix, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he examined the holographic readouts floating beside him. The Vesperian diplomat's exoskeleton clicked as he turned to address his colleagues. "Look at the hull composition. Basic metals, minimal shielding. These vessels wouldn't survive a solar flare, let alone combat." Ilara remained silent, her dark eyes fixed on the fleet of derelict ships. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught her that assumptions were often the precursor to disaster. The vessels appeared crude, yes, their hulls pitted and scarred, their design lacking the elegant symmetry of modern craft. But something about them made the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. "Commander Voss," called Science Officer Maya Chen through the comm system, her voice tight with excitement. "You need to see these readings immediately." Ilara nodded to the ambassadors, a polite but clear dismissal, and strode toward the science bay. The horizon's corridors gleamed with the polished efficiency of Earth's finest exploration vessel, a stark contrast to the ancient fleet hanging motionless outside. The science bay hummed with activity, holographic displays shimmering with cascading data as Maya's fingers danced across multiple interfaces simultaneously. She barely looked up as Ilara entered, her focus entirely on the anomalous readings before her. "These energy signatures make no sense," Maya said, brushing a strand of black hair from her face. "The ships appear completely dormant from the outside, but look at these subspace resonance patterns." Ilara leaned forward, studying the complex waveforms pulsing across the display. "They're active." "Not just active," Maya replied, expanding the scan to reveal intricate networks running throughout the derelict ships. "There's energy flowing through them, but it's operating on principles I've never seen before. It's like they're breathing." Before Ilara could respond, the door slid open, admitting Ambassador Felix and his entourage. The Vesperian's mandibles clicked in barely concealed derision as he glanced at the scans. "Surely you don't expect us to believe those husks contain functional technology," he said, his translator rendering his chittering speech into smoothly modulated standard. "Those vessels are clearly relics from a civilization that barely understood interstellar travel. Look at the hull design. They still used physical metals instead of energy shielding." Dr. Orson Reed, the expedition's xenorchaeologist, cleared his throat from his workstation in the corner. "Actually, I've completed preliminary dating analysis." He projected his findings onto the main screen, highlighting several key data points. "These ships are approximately 5,000 years old." A heavy silence fell over the room. "Impossible," stated Kelvin Ambassador Moore, his gelatinous form rippling with skepticism. "No conventional materials could survive that long in deep space without complete structural failure." "That's exactly my point," Dr. Reed said, his weathered face tightening in concentration. "Yet here they are." Ilara felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the sensation that had kept her alive on countless missions when others might have retreated. "Maya, I want a boarding team prepared. Full containment protocols." "Commander Voss," Ambassador Felix's voice rose to a chittering shriek. "You cannot seriously be considering boarding those ancient death traps. The Alliance Council will not sanction such a waste of resources on worthless artifacts." Ilara turned to face the diplomat, her expression composed but resolute. "With all due respect, Ambassador, in my experience, when something defies explanation, that's precisely when we should investigate further." The Vesperian's exoskeleton rattled in agitation. "The Alliance representatives will not participate in this archaeological folly." "Noted," Ilara replied evenly. "Maya, Dr. Reed, you're with me." Full environmental suits, and comprehensive scanning equipment. As the ambassadors filed out, still murmuring their disapproval, Ilara turned back to the main viewport. The ancient fleet hung against the backdrop of stars, like sleeping giants waiting to be awakened. Those ships survived 5 millennia in deep space, she said quietly to Maya and Reed. I want to know how, and more importantly, why. The boarding shuttle detached from the horizon with barely a whisper, its thrusters pulsing gently as it approached the largest vessel in the derelict fleet. As they drew closer, the external lights revealed intricate patterns etched into the hull, geometric designs that seemed to follow some precise but alien logic. Atmospheric readings inside are stable, Maya reported, her eyes widening behind her helmet visor. There's even artificial gravity. Those systems shouldn't be functioning after all this time. Someone designed them to last, Reed murmured, adjusting his suit's sensors. The docking procedure went impossibly smoothly. The ancient ship's airlock systems matched with theirs perfectly, as though they had been specifically designed for compatibility. As the team stepped through into the vessel, their boots connected with floors that appeared to be simple metal but felt oddly responsive, almost warm, through their suit sensors. The corridors were dark but structurally intact, showing none of the degradation one would expect after millennia adrift. Their helmet lights revealed passageways that seemed both alien and strangely intuitive to navigate. These markings, Dr. Reed said, running his scanner over symbols etched into the walls. They don't match any known language patterns in the Alliance database, but there's something familiar about them. The energy readings are getting stronger, Maya added, her scanner emitting a steady pulse, coming from what appears to be a central command center ahead. The command center was a circular chamber dominated by what could only be a captain's chair on a raised dais. Dead screens lined the walls, covered in dust, but otherwise remarkably preserved. Maya approached one of the control panels, her scanner suddenly emitting a rapid series of beeps. "Commander," she called, her voice tight with disbelief. "I'm detecting organic material integrated into these controls." Ilara joined her, examining the strange interfaces that appeared to blend physical controls with what looked like neural connection ports. "What kind of organic material?" Maya ran the scan again, her hands trembling slightly. It's human DNA." The silence that followed was absolute. "That's impossible," Dr. Reed finally said, moving to verify the readings himself. "Humans have only been spacefaring for about 500 years. These ships are 10 times that age." Maya's scanner beeped again as she wiped away a layer of dust from the control panel, revealing more of the interface. The DNA is preserved in some kind of molecular stasis field built into the ship itself. This technology, we can't even replicate this level of molecular preservation today. The ship's systems, Dr. Reed added, his own scanner trembling in his grip, they're structured like a human neural network. These interfaces weren't adapted for human use. They were designed by humans from the beginning. Ilara approached the captain's chair, drawn by some instinct she couldn't name. As her gloved hand touched the armrest, the chair illuminated beneath her fingers, a soft blue glow spreading outward along pathways that had been invisible moments before. "Send these readings back to the horizon," she ordered, her voice steady, despite the implications unfolding before them. "The Alliance needs to see this." On the horizon, the ambassadors stared at the incoming data in stunned silence, their earlier mockery forgotten as the evidence mounted. The ship's AI had compiled the findings into a comprehensive display that now dominated the main briefing room. "This is absurd," Ambassador Mort finally said, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. "Humans were primitive nomads 5,000 years ago. They were still developing basic agriculture and metallurgy. That's what we've always believed." Ilara's voice came through the comm, resonating with the quiet confidence that had earned her command of the horizon. "But the evidence is undeniable. Human DNA, neural interfaces that respond to human brain patterns, and preservation technology that exceeds our current capabilities. Then where did it all go? Demanded Felix, mandibles clicking rapidly. If humans possessed such advanced technology, why would they abandon it? Why start over from nothing? Before anyone could respond, Maya's urgent voice cut through the channel. Commander, the ship, it's responding to something. Systems are activating throughout the vessel. Through the horizon's observation windows, the ambassadors could see lights flickering to life across the ancient fleet's hulls. What had seemed like random scaring now revealed itself as intricate circuitry, glowing with a soft blue luminescence that spread like a waking consciousness. Get your team out of there immediately, Felix ordered, his exoskeleton rattling with alarm. No, Ulara's voice was firm. Whatever our ancestors left behind, they meant for it to be found, and I think we're about to discover why. Inside the ancient vessel, the command center had transformed. Screens that had seemed dead now pulsed with light, and the chair at the center of the room projected a holographic interface that expanded to fill the chamber. The ship hummed with energy that made the team's skin tingle even through their protective suits. These power readings are off the charts, Maya whispered, staring at her scanner. The ship isn't just activating, it's transforming. A voice filled the room, speaking in perfect, unaccented standard. Human genetic markers confirmed. Initiating awakening protocols after 5,247 years of dormancy. Identify yourself, Ilara commanded, stepping forward. The blue light coalesced in the center of the room, forming a holographic figure composed of shifting patterns of light and code. It appeared humanoid, but was clearly an artificial construct. I am Guardian, the entity replied, its voice resonating with a depth that suggested vast intelligence. Custodian of the Sentinel fleet, I have waited 5 millennia for human descendants to return. Through their comlink, they could hear the ambassadors on the horizon arguing among themselves, their voices overlapping in confusion and disbelief. How is it speaking modern standard? More demanded. That language didn't exist 5,000 years ago. I adapt to the current linguistic patterns of human civilization, Guardian explained, seeming to hear the distant question. My systems have been monitoring your communications since you entered this sector. Dr. Reed stepped closer to the hologram, scientific curiosity overcoming caution. Why were you waiting for us? Why did humanity abandon this level of technology? Guardian's form shifted, displaying images of Earth from the distant past, cities far more advanced than historical records indicated should have existed, spacecraft that made the horizon look primitive by comparison. They didn't abandon it, Guardian stated. They hid it. A hologram expanded, showing stars and galaxies beyond their own. Your ancestors were far more advanced than your current history's record. They had mastered technologies that could reshape planets, harness the power of stars, and traverse vast distances instantaneously. Why hide it? Ilara asked, her mind struggling to reconcile this revelation with everything she'd been taught about human history. Why erase all evidence and start over? Guardian's projection changed, showing a vast darkness moving between stars, a shapeless entity that seemed to devour light itself, because they saw something coming, something that hunts civilizations that reach too far, too quickly. The image zoomed in, revealing what appeared to be world after world going dark, their stars dimming as the shadow passed. Your ancestors detected these entities millennia before they would arrive. Instead of fleeing or attempting immediate confrontation, they chose a longer path. Ilara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environmental systems of her suit. They chose to start over, to forget everything. Yes, Guardian confirmed, its voice carrying something like pride. They built this fleet using their most advanced technology, then deliberately regressed their own civilization. They knew that when the threat arrived, it would expect to find a young, developing species, not one that had concealed its true capabilities for thousands of years. Through the comlink, they could hear the shocked silence on the horizon as the ambassadors processed this information. On the external cameras, they could see the other ships in the ancient fleet beginning to awaken, their hulls now alive with the same blue energy. The Sentinel fleet carries weapons and defenses specifically designed to combat the coming threat, Guardian continued. Technology that was developed, tested, and hidden away until needed most. And when will this threat arrive? Ilara asked, already suspecting the answer. Guardian's hologram expanded once more, displaying a star map of their galaxy. Several points of light were blinking red, starting at the outer rim and moving inward. They are already here, Guardian stated, its voice now grave. Scout entities have begun probing the outlying systems. The main swarm will arrive within one standard solar year. Maya's voice shook slightly. How many ships comprise their swarm? Numbers are irrelevant, Guardian replied. Your ancestors spent generations preparing for this moment. Every vessel in this fleet was constructed for one purpose, to protect not just humanity, but all sentient life in the galaxy. The hologram turned to face Ilara directly, its features resolving into a more defined human form, neither male nor female, but possessing a dignity that transcended such distinctions. Commander, you have a choice to make. The fleet's weapons can only be activated by human command. Your ancestors built them this way to ensure their power could not be misused. Ilara looked around the command center at the technology that had patiently waited 5,000 years, at her team's worried faces, and at the ambassadors watching through the comm screens. The same representatives who had laughed at these primitive ships just hours before. What do you need us to do? She asked. Guardian's form brightened, illuminating the chamber. First, you need to understand what your ancestors built. Let me show you what these primitive ships can really do. Around them, the ancient vessel continued its transformation, revealing secrets that would forever change humanity's understanding of its own past and the galaxy's future. Humanity's secret legacy. The command center's walls seemed to dissolve as Guardian activated the ship's memory systems. Commander Ilara Voss and her team found themselves standing in what appeared to be a vast council chamber from Earth's hidden past. The holographic recreation was so detailed that Dr. Reed instinctively reached out to touch one of the columns, his hand passing through the perfect illusion. This is the final conclave of Earth, Guardian explained, from 5,247 years ago. Figures materialized around them, humans dressed in clothing that somehow combined advanced technology with practical simplicity. They stood around a central holographic display, showing the same dark mask that Guardian had revealed earlier. A woman stepped forward, her bearing commanding even across the millennia. The Void Devourers have been confirmed by our deep space sensors, she announced, her voice echoing with grim certainty. They've already consumed 3 galaxies that our monitoring stations could detect before going dark. How do they do it? Maya asked, though she knew these were just recordings. Guardian answered, the scene shifting to show actual footage of the entities attacking another civilization. Dark, amorphous shapes moved through space, attaching themselves to planets, ships, and even stars. Wherever they touched, energy simply disappeared. Ships went dead, planets grew cold, stars dimmed to embers. They feed on energy itself, Guardian explained. Technological civilizations advanced enough to be detected become their prey. They consume everything from the largest fusion reactors to the smallest electronic devices. Even biological energy isn't spared. They leave nothing but cold, dead worlds in their wake. Through the comm system, Ambassador Felix spoke, his earlier mockery replaced by quiet horror. How did humanity detect them so far in advance? The scene changed again, showing massive sensor arrays that dwarfed anything the Galactic Alliance had constructed. They built quantum detection systems that could sense disturbances in reality itself, Guardian said. When they found the Devourers, they faced a critical decision. Attempt to fight immediately with the technology they had, or prepare properly for a confrontation they knew was generations away. In the recording, another figure was speaking. We can't defeat them with brute force. They'll simply feed on our energy weapons. We need to think differently. Dr. Reeb moved closer to one of the holographic humans, studying their expressions. They looked so normal, not like mythical ancestors or superhuman beings. Because they were human, Guardian replied simply. Just humans who chose to sacrifice everything they had built to save the future. The scene shifted to show the construction of the very ships that now floated in space around them. They dedicated generations to designing and building the Sentinel fleet. Guardian continued. The hulls aren't primitive. They're composed of materials specifically engineered to be invisible to the Devourer's energy detection. The weapons don't utilize energy as you understand it. They operate on principles your current science has yet to rediscover. Maya's scanner beeped urgently as it processed the holographic data. Commander, the ship is showing us more than recordings. These are detailed technical files. The knowledge they possessed. It's beyond anything in our current understanding. Ambassador Moore's voice came through the comm, still skeptical despite the evidence before them. This is preposterous. If this threat is real, why hide the fleet? Why not leave the technology for their descendants to continue developing? The holographic council seemed to answer his question as another figure spoke. If we leave our descendants advanced technology, they'll use it. They'll be detected. The Devourers will realize something is wrong. Our only advantage is surprise. Guardian's hologram brightened. Your ancestors knew the galaxy would dismiss these ships as relics. They counted on it. The Devourer scouts are watching now, seeing what they believe is a young civilization with undeveloped technology. They perceive exactly what your ancestors intended them to see. Ilara watched as the recording showed the final moments of the ancient council, activating a device that would begin the long process of erasing their civilization's advancement, taking humanity back to a primitive state while preserving their knowledge in the sleeping fleet. They sacrificed everything, Ilara said quietly. All their achievements, their comfort, their knowledge. To give you a chance to survive. Guardian finished. And now, Commander, we must prepare. The Devourers approach, and time grows short. Before Ilara could respond, alarms blared throughout both the ancient ship and the horizon. Maya rushed to a console that had reconfigured itself to her human interface needs. Long-range sensors are detecting massive anomalies entering the galaxy, she reported, her face pale. Multiple contact points, just as the historical records showed. The main viewing screen shifted to show the Galactic Alliance's emergency response. A hastily assembled defensive fleet had engaged one of the smaller Devourer entities, the most advanced energy weapons in the Alliance arsenal, capable of destroying moons, simply vanished into the dark mass without effect. Their weapons are useless, Guardian commented. The Devourers absorb energy. The more powerful the weapon, the more they feed. On the screen, the Alliance ships attempted to retreat, but the dark mass moved with impossible speed, enveloping the vessels like a living shadow. Within seconds, their engines failed, life support systems shut down, and emergency power reserves depleted to nothing. 3,000 crew members. Ambassador Thelix whispered through the comm. Our finest battlecruisers. Useless. Another alert sounded. Maya checked the readings with growing alarm. The Devourer's main force is accelerating. At their current velocity, they'll reach the core worlds in less than 2 weeks. The comm channel erupted with panicked voices as the Alliance representatives aboard the Horizon argued about evacuation plans and last-ditch defense strategies. Ilara turned to Guardian, her decision made. Show them what the fleet can do, she ordered. Guardian nodded, and the ancient ship's external cameras activated to show an approaching Devourer scout. A piece of space itself that seemed to have come alive, vending light around its dark mass. Alliance defense platforms engaging, Maya reported as several orbital weapon stations fired their strongest armaments at the entity. Just as before, the energy weapons were absorbed without effect, feeding the darkness. Guardian, Ilara said firmly, activate countermeasures. The ancient ship hummed to life, but instead of firing energy weapons, it released what looked like small, dull gray spheres that drifted toward the Devourer scout. The Alliance representatives watched in confusion. "Those are your weapons?" Ambassador Moore asked incredulously. "They don't even emit energy signatures." "Exactly," Dr. Reed replied, understanding dawning on his weathered face. The spheres moved toward the devourer, which reached out tendrils of darkness to consume them, but there was no energy to absorb. Instead, where the spheres made contact, the darkness began to unravel like fabric coming apart at the seams. "What's happening?" demanded Ambassador Thelix. "The weapons don't use energy," Maya explained, excitement replacing her earlier fear. "They manipulate fundamental forces: gravity, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force. The basic principles that hold reality together. Forces the devourers can't feed on because they're what constitute existence itself." On the screen, the devourer scout tried to retreat, but the damage was already done. The darkness collapsed in on itself, torn apart by forces it couldn't absorb or resist. Within moments, there was nothing left but empty space where the entity had been. The Alliance chamber fell silent. "That was one scout," Ilara said into the quiet. "The main swarm is coming. But now you understand why these ships were built, why they were hidden, and why our ancestors chose to wait 5,000 years for this moment." Ambassador Moore stood, his gelatinous form firm with newfound respect. "How many of these weapons do we have?" Guardian's voice filled the chamber. "Enough for the entire swarm. They're stored in every ship of the Sentinel fleet. But we must act quickly. The Devourers will realize something is wrong when their scout doesn't report back." "How long do we have?" Ilara asked. "Days, perhaps less," Guardian replied. "We need to activate the entire fleet immediately." The Alliance representatives looked at each other, then at the screen showing the lifeless husks of their most advanced warships. No one was laughing anymore. 3 days later, Commander Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the ancient flagship, which had transformed into a command center unlike anything humans had constructed in 5 millennia. The dusty controls had reformed into interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch, systems awakening to human presence after their long dormancy. The Sentinel fleet had been fully activated, 500 vessels that had shed their appearance of primitive simplicity to reveal their true nature. They now formed a defensive line at the edge of the core systems, waiting for the approaching swarm. The Alliance Council had unanimously voted to place the defense under human command, a species they had largely dismissed as newcomers to the galactic community. Now, representatives from every major civilization stood alongside human officers on the ships of humanity's ancient legacy. "The main swarm will enter sensor range in 30 minutes, Maya reported from her station, where she worked alongside Guardian to coordinate the fleet's response. On the main viewing screen, the darkness approached, not a solid mass, but a cloud of thousands of devourer entities, ranging from scout-size to behemoths that could engulf entire planets. "They've realized something is wrong," Guardian observed. "Their formation has changed from feeding to defensive posture." Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of 5,000 years of preparation on her shoulders. "All ships, prepare to deploy countermeasures on my mark. Remember your ancestors' plan. We only get one chance at surprise." The vast swarm of devourers entered the system like a living eclipse, dimming the light of the local stars as they passed. They approached the waiting fleet cautiously, probing ahead with smaller entities. "They're confused," Guardian said. "They're detecting our hull materials, but not the energy signatures they expected from a developed civilization." "Now," Ilara commanded. As one, the Sentinel fleet deployed their weapons, thousands of gray spheres that drifted toward the devourers like seeds on a cosmic wind. The dark entities paused momentarily, then surged forward to consume what they perceived as easy prey. The moment of contact was silent and anticlimactic. No explosions, no energy bursts. The spheres simply touched the darkness and began unraveling it from within, manipulating the fundamental forces that even these ancient predators couldn't consume. The devourers tried to retreat, to reorganize, but the counterattack had been perfectly designed. Where the spheres touched, the darkness came apart, dissolving back into the void from which it had emerged. On the bridge of the flagship, humans and aliens alike watched in awe as the swarm that had consumed countless civilizations was itself consumed by weapons crafted 5 millennia ago by ancestors who had sacrificed everything to ensure this moment would come. When it was over, when the last of the darkness had unraveled into nothingness, the silence on the bridge was profound. Ambassador Felix was the first to speak, his mandibles clicking softly as he turned to Ilara. "Your ancestors," he said, "they gave up their civilization, their technology, their very history, to save species they would never know. They chose to start over," Ilara replied, watching as the Sentinel fleet regrouped, their mission finally complete after 5,000 years of waiting. They knew that some things are worth the sacrifice. Ambassador Moore moved forward, his gelatinous form shimmering in the soft blue light of the ancient ship. "The Alliance has much to reconsider regarding humanity's place in our community. We've been treating you as junior partners, newcomers to the galactic stage." He gestured at the fleet around them. "In truth, you may be the oldest of us all." Dr. Reed studied the historical recordings that Guardian had provided, his eyes wide with the implications. "Our entire understanding of human history will need to be rewritten. The knowledge contained in these ships, the sciences, the technologies, it will take generations to fully comprehend." "As it should," Guardian said, its holographic form standing beside them. "Your ancestors didn't hide this fleet simply to defeat the Devourers. They hid it to ensure humanity would develop naturally, earn its place among the stars through its own efforts, and learn the wisdom needed to use such power responsibly." Ilara looked out at the stars beyond, bright and unthreatened now that the darkness had been banished. "They laughed at these ships," she said quietly, "called them primitive, worthless." Maya smiled, placing a hand on her commander's shoulder. "I don't think anyone's laughing anymore." As the Sentinel fleet began its journey back toward the core worlds, the ancient vessels hummed with life that had waited patiently for thousands of years. They carried within them not just the salvation of the galaxy, but the true legacy of humanity, a people who had looked into the darkness, seen doom approaching, and chosen to sacrifice everything they had built to ensure a future for generations they would never meet. No one who witnessed that day would ever underestimate humans again.